The history of Donkey Kong Country. The Donkey Kong series and the Super Mario series stories began together. Their stories began with a game called Radarscope and a character called Popeye. In 1981, Nintendo released its first arcade game in North America called Radarscope. It was a space shooter similar to Space Invaders, which was very popular at the time in the arcades. Radarscope was successful in Japan, but never really caught on in North America, only selling 1,000 units of the 3,000 units Nintendo had in stock. Nintendo needed to do something quickly, or their venture in the North American video game market would fail. Hiroshi Yamashita, president of Nintendo at the time, would turn to a young employee named Shigeru Miyamoto. Miyamoto was tasked with designing a new game using the same hardware used in Radarscope so Nintendo could convert the 2,000 Radarscope cabinets sitting in their North American warehouse. Miyamoto's first idea was to make a game about the popular cartoon character Popeye. Popeye would have to rescue Olive Oyl from Pluto, who kidnapped her. But after Nintendo could not get the rights to Popeye, the characters were switched. Popeye turned into Jumpman, later named Mario. Olive Oyl turned into Pauline. And Pluto, well, Pluto would become Donkey Kong. Miyamoto came up with the name Donkey Kong, trying to translate stupid gorilla. The arcade game Donkey Kong was a huge success. The arcade sequels, Donkey Kong Jr. in 1983 and Donkey Kong 3 in 1984, were also very successful. But Mario was the one who merged from the series, getting his own game in the arcade called Mario Brothers, and then became the most famous video game character of all times with the game Super Mario Brothers for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The arcade games were re-released for the NES, and also a spin-off was made for the NES called Donkey Kong Jr. Math. Other than that, it seemed Mario was a star, and we wouldn't see Donkey Kong again. Things would change about 10 years later in 1994 with the help of a UK development company called Rareware. Rareware had developed several NES games like Battletoads, but for the new Super Nintendo, they had started experimenting with a Silicon Graphics Challenge workstation. They created a boxing game demo using the new 3D technology. Rareware used pre-rendered graphics with a 3D model saved as a 2D color-reduced image. This gave it a realistic look that no one had ever really seen on the home console up to that point. Nintendo staff went to visit Rare Studios and they were very impressed with the boxing demo. Genyo Takeda went back to Japan to tell then-president Hiroshi Yamashita. After talks between Nintendo and Rareware, Nintendo acquired 49% of Rare, which gave Nintendo the new boxing game using the 3D technology and made Rare a second-party developer for Nintendo. The boxing game Rare was working on was then scrapped after Rare asked Nintendo to use the Donkey Kong characters for a new game. Nintendo gave them permission, and Rare's new 3D technology was used for the new Donkey Kong project, later known as Donkey Kong Country. According to the project manager Dan Olson, a total of 20 people worked on Donkey Kong Country over an 18-month development cycle, the most that Rare had ever assembled for one project at that point. Rare decided to use a second character instead of a life bar. At first, Rare wanted the second character to be Donkey Kong Jr., but after Nintendo saw their design, they wanted DK Jr. to look like the original from the arcade, or for Rare to come up with a new character name. Rare chose to keep the character design and chose the name Dinky Kong, later changing it to Diddy Kong after hearing legal advice. When Rare presented the first playable version of the game to Nintendo, Nintendo asked them to reduce the game's difficulty to make the game appeal to a wider audience. Nintendo also thought the amount of secrets in the game provided enough challenges to appeal to more hardcore gamers. There was mixed reviews from Nintendo employees. Game Boy creator Gunpei Yokoi did not like the 3D character models, while Shigeru Miyamoto thought it worked well with the game, and even suggested Donkey Kong's ground hand slap that Rare would ultimately use in the game. It is usually reported that Shigeru Miyamoto allegedly criticized the game, calling its gameplay mediocrity. However, he has since addressed these rumors and expressed fondness for the game. Donkey Kong Country was very successful upon release in November of 1994, receiving critical acclaim and high praise. Many critics consider that Donkey Kong Country saved the Super Nintendo Entertainment System from the growing influences of rivals such as the new Sony PlayStation and the rising popularity of Sonic the Hedgehog series. Donkey Kong Country sold 6 million units within its first holiday season. After selling 9 million units, Donkey Kong Country became the second best-selling Super Nintendo Entertainment System game. Rare's redesign of the Donkey Kong character would then become a standard for all future Nintendo games featuring him, including his appearance in Super Smash Bros. series and various Mario Kart games. The Donkey Kong Country would get a sequel in the following years, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, which was also praised with critical acclaim. There is no doubt that Donkey Kong Country will always be remembered as one of the very best games for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Its legacy lives on with the latest in the series of Donkey Kong Country games, such as Tropical Freeze, released in 2014 for the Wii U by Retro Studios, and it's thought to be one of the best games for the Wii U as well. Also, Donkey Kong Country is available on the Wii U and the new 3DS eShops through the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Virtual Console. Donkey Kong Country was a true resurrection of a character that had been long forgotten. The importance of Donkey Kong Country to both Nintendo and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System cannot be remiss. Donkey Kong Country is thought to be probably one of the top 10 best games in the Super Nintendo, if not one of the top 5. Release of Donkey Kong Country also brought back a character that had been forgotten, and now, 25 years later, is thought to be a mainstay of the Nintendo world. Hey guys, thanks very much for listening to the history of Donkey Kong Country. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I need to give some shout outs as always. First and foremost, guys, big thank you to Cas Lush, who does these videos for us every single month. It is absolutely incredible, and we appreciate the work he does with that. So go check him out on Gaming Docs and Nintendo Nuggets. But I need to thank you guys, the amazing Patreon supporters who help us do this every single month and to fund not only the Retro Rewind, but these videos and the art series that we do with Adam as well. So guys, shout outs. All right, here we go. Some shout outs to all you amazing patron supporters. This list keeps getting longer, so that makes me happy. So I'm going to list through all these amazing people. So here we go. Holden, Brian, Richard, Then and Now Studios, Paul, Ben, Sheldon, Adam, Phoenix, Nick, Marty, Steve, John, Colin, Eli, Brian, Jim, Chris, Zelda, Jacob, Chad, Nick, Joel, John, Toys for Games, Eric, Jesse. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. Thank you so much for enjoying the content that we put out there. And thank you so much for being active members in our community. We do this because we enjoy doing it, and we love hearing from you guys and connecting with you and doing these amazing projects with you. So thank you so much, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. All right. Thanks again for everything. And thanks for listening to Nintendo Dads. You guys are the best. Truly, truly the best.
Gaming Dogs. Gaming Dogs.
Take you to Gaming Dogs.